Hello, and welcome to the Strength Catalyst. I'm your host, Colleen Baselli. And on this podcast, I sit down with nonprofit leaders and changemakers for honest, strengths-based conversations about leadership, what's working, what's hard, and how we can keep growing alongside the missions we care about. Today's episode offers a slightly different perspective. It's about leading in uncertainty, building something without a clear roadmap, and learning as you go. My guest is Brett Donelson, founder and CEO of The Cycle Effect in Colorado. They're an organization that uses mountain biking to build confidence, belonging, well-being, and opportunity for young women. What stood out to me about Brett right away was his reflectiveness, his authenticity, and his willingness to be honest about the pressures of leadership. He's growing an organization that's moving fast, experimenting often, and sometimes figuring things out in real time, all while staying deeply connected to the mission. In our conversation, Brett talks openly about that tension. We explore how he uses his strengths to stay grounded, to navigate setbacks, to handle conflict, and to keep showing up with confidence, even when there isn't a clear script. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Strength Catalyst. And I'm so happy to have Brett Donelson with me today. Brett and I met at the introduction, through the introduction of my sister-in-law in Vail, Colorado, where Brett's based. And when I told Erin, my sister-in-law, that I was starting this podcast, she strongly recommended you, Brett, as an inspiring leader doing very meaningful work. And we found that we were very like-minded and really had an immediate connection, which was fabulous. So it's really an honor and really a privilege to have this live in-person coaching convo with you. So you're the founder and the CEO of The Cycle Effect. And I love the fact that your website description of your organization says, The Cycle Effect uses the bike as a catalyst to mentor athletes and foster belonging, physical well-being, mental health, community engagement, leadership skills, and fun outside. And with the name of my business and this podcast as the Strength Catalyst, the idea of a catalyst is music to my ears as a way to inspire people to be introspective, intentional, and energized. And I'm eager for you to tell our listeners about how you and your team accomplish that. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Colleen. It's an honor to be here. Yeah, I'm Brett Donelson. I grew up in the Northeast in Syracuse, New York, was a skier and ended up traveling internationally for years, coaching ski racers. I met my Australian wife doing that, Tam, which brought me to the Vail area through skiing. And then through a myriad of events, we started the Cycle Effect around 2013. There was no great 10-year sexy business plan. It was just we just thought we wanted to help some kids, and we were able to find some bikes to do it. And so we started this program with 10 girls. They were all high school and middle school girls. 9 of them were Hispanic, and I grew up in Syracuse. Tam grew up in Australia. We did not have a lot of connection to the Hispanic community. But what we saw after we started working with these kids was just a really special community, a really special culture. And we thought hey, we're onto something here. And so we have now grown the Cycle Effect to, well, let me give you a little bit about the mission first. So we help young women ride and race mountain bikes and go to college, essentially. So we will work with girls from 5th grade to 12th grade. 70% of them around are from the Latina culture and demographic, which in the mountains of Western Colorado, it's a huge population here. And so we will provide everything these girls need. So we'll provide equipment, storage, transportation, coaches, up to 80 days of coaching a year, race nutrition, race entries. And then as they get to be older, we will provide junior coaching jobs for them. And then we will help them with their college applications, college admissions process, and get them into school. We don't pay for their school. There's plenty of other avenues to help them with scholarships and things like that we find, we help them find. When we started, it was just Tam and I volunteering and literally just a mom and pop labor of love organization. And over the last, now I guess it's been 12 or 13 years, we've grown to about a 10-person staff, full-time staff. And then we have about 80 to 90 part-time paid coaches. We're in 5 different counties across Western Colorado, all the way out to Grand Junction and on the west. And then our eastmost is Summit County, which is like Breckenridge and Frisco. And then we go up to Steamboat in Routt County. So that's kind of the general basic numbers. The bike is really for us a tool to mentor these young women. We have conversations around suicide. We have conversations around bullying. We have conversations around food and nutrition, and we have all sorts of conversations that show up in these young people's lives. And I kind of look at it that we're the first line of defense almost and proactivity around
Mm-hmm.
mental health. They come to us first, often before they come to their parents, before they come to teachers. So we take our job real seriously in terms of the effect we can have on these young women. And luckily, we picked a really fun avenue to do it. So that's the basics of who we are and what we do.
That is so admirable. Yeah, I really have such high regard and respect for you to be dedicating your work life to a mission that is so important to a population of people that really can benefit from it. So thank you for sharing that.
Tam and I have spent, yeah, pretty much 12 to 13 years. We've made a lot of mistakes, but I feel like in the last few years, we've really hit some successful strides and are now able to have the impact that we kind of imagined we would be having way back when we created it. It's just taken, I'm impatient, so it takes longer than I wanted it to, but I feel like we're finally getting to that point where we have women graduating, they're having kids, those kids are, starting to ride bikes. We this year we have our first ever second generation athlete. And we've got a board member. We've got girls getting master's degrees in social work and coming back and supporting their communities and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool to watch the long-term impact that we've had. And then they just are very clear that we were a big part of that impact. We don't take credit for
Mm-hmm.
everything, of course. The girls are very clear that we've had a huge impact on them, which is nice to
Mm-hmm.
hear,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh, yeah. Well, and I'm sure all of that doesn't come with a lot of hard work and, challenging conversations now and then, the need for you to be a really strong leader. And that's why we're doing this podcast. So let's get into it. Yeah. So, in preparation for our conversation today, you took the strengths profile assessment. So, my goal is to really help you be as intentional as you can in maximizing your strengths and be as strategic as possible along the way. So, for those of you who are listening, the strengths profile is a really powerful tool that helps you uncover and define your 60 strengths. And if what you hear today in this conversation intrigues you, know that there's a free version of the strengths profile that anyone can take. And I'll share more about that at the very end of the podcast. But right now, let's jump into our coaching conversation, Brett. So before we
Great.
started this interview, you suggested to me that the strengths debrief could be useful if we talked about two things. You said continuing to keep your confidence as a leader when things don't go quite as you have planned. And secondly, you suggested it'd be helpful for us to think about strategies that you could use for standing firm behind your decision when you've got people who may disagree with your perspective or your decision. Is there anything you want to add to that before we get started?
No, if you can solve those, I'm good. It's a guaranteed solve on your part, right? 100%.
I'm going to
We'll see.
say I'm going to say 100% because you know
I love
why?
it.
We're talking about your strengths. So I'm not going to solve it. I mean, I'm the coach that creates the space, right? And points you to your tools and really helps you think about, well, am I using as many of my tools as I can be, my strengths? Am I using them as wisely as I can be? Are there any I'm overplaying and creating these problems for myself? So that's why I love being a strengths coach because coaching is not about me flexing whatever expertise I may think I have. It's really helping you by bringing you to your tools. I was thinking to start this off, you said your first goal is to develop your confidence as a leader when things don't go as planned. And I'm wondering, like, why is it hard for you to have confidence when things don't go as planned?
Hi, I'm Shannon, Colleen's daughter and her business partner in developing a tool that inspires self-reflection, introspective strength cards. These are a set of 60 beautifully designed cards, each with an inspiring quote, and a simple call to action to help you pause, reflect, and be more intentional in how you use your strengths each day. The idea is simple. Pull a card, read and reflect on the message, and use it to spark a fresh perspective. It's an easy, practical way to build confidence, deepen self-awareness, and bring your best self forward, one strength at a time. You can check them out and order your own deck at introspectivecards.com. Whether you use them personally, gift them to a friend, or bring them into your workplace, they're designed to help you reconnect with what energizes you. Again, that's introspectivecards.com, your daily companions on a journey to authenticity and happiness.
For me, in my role, a lot of times it's a financial thing. Like things don't go well, or things don't go as planned financially. Like we apply for grants and we don't receive them or something like that. And then all of a sudden you're looking at real tangible numbers and real bottom line numbers of, oh yeah, this is different than what we thought it was, when we made our budget 9 months ago and it didn't align and stuff like that. So a lot of my lack of confidence will come around if financial goals aren't hit or financial metrics. And it's not like we're out making some giant profit and we have this huge reserve, sitting there for us to make mistakes. But the other challenge around that is like, we are trying to be as innovative as possible, but innovation takes failed attempts, and failed attempts cost money and things like that. So I think that it's, the world that we're in as the cycle effect is we're trying to be really innovative on how we're using the bike, how we're trying to create equity with the bike for different populations, and are really kind of a leader in the forefront of this. So there's not a great roadmap on some of these things to just like follow. So you got to have the ability and the finances to go out and create new ideas and new solutions, but then you also have to be really fiscally responsible. Like, hey, we can't go out and make too many mistakes, or we can't go out and do things too. So that I think that's finance is definitely one place that it comes up. And then of course, I think the other place is, it alludes to my second one, is like, as a leader, of course you want to be liked. Of course you want people to agree with you. Of course you want even the community, whether it's staff, whether it's community, whether it's partners, whether it's your constituents, you want people to be in agreement. And the bigger you get, the less likely that is to have 100% agreement, right? And so I'm just learning as a leader to realize, just because a couple of people don't agree, as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, a couple of people is still a really small percentage. And kind of being okay with like the larger numbers as you grow. Does that kind of make sense? Like a good friend of mine said, it's like when only 10 people know about you and one person doesn't like you, like that's 10%. He's like, but when 10,000 people know about you, that's like 1,000 people that may not like you, and it's still 10% or something like that. So it's just kind of growing with myself, growing so that I can grow in the scale and the growth of the organization, if that makes sense.
It does. What I've heard you say so far is that one of the hits on your confidence is when you have factors that you can't control, like the resources aren't there. And the second thing is that the relationships really matter. Kind of getting sometimes decisions get in the way, maintaining the agreeableness or the positivity or whatever, of the relationship that ultimately you wish you could have all the time rather than having anybody who's disappointed. So I was looking at your strengths profile and your list of strengths before our conversation, of course. And as I look at this list that we have in front of us from the strengths profile, I noted a couple of interesting things. So on your most prominent realized strengths that you are getting the most energy from, that you're performing the best, amongst your highest ranking strengths is your judgment. So that's the strength that suggests, when you responded to it, that you feel confident that you can make a decision that'll stand up to challenge because you've looked at enough facts and figures and have enough information. I see on your list the spotlight strength, which would suggest that you're comfortable holding people's attention, holding the floor, getting them to hear what you have to say. I also see on your list persuasion. So that's the strength that suggests that you're pretty good, or at least you feel you're pretty good at, and you get energy from trying to think of ways that you can orchestrate what you have to say or how you're going to say it so that people will come around to your point of view.
My first grade teacher, my mom told me this, Brett's very good at manipulating the kids to play the way he wants. So I think the persuasion thing is is probably pretty spot on.
Well, that's the thing about our strengths. Most of them we have had, since we were young, and we can work on certain strengths and develop them. We put energy into them. And certainly the context in which we use our strengths shifts. And so some of them will become more prominent at certain times and less, based on the scenarios that we're in. But based on the strengths profile that you took, you've got a pretty powerful combination of strengths that seem like, on surface anyway, just looking at the words, that they would be really useful in the types of scenarios you're describing. But sometimes, the strengths that we're pulling out of our toolkit most commonly are effective, but are short, perhaps, of what we're going to need when we are, in the thick of something that's a little bit more challenging or different than the types of challenges we've had in the past when we've needed confidence or persuasion. So you also have in front of you a list of what are called unrealized strengths. And those are the strengths that you have, that you perform well and get energy from, but perhaps are using a little bit less. And so I point your attention to that list because I'm curious to know, as you think about these scenarios where you'd like to have more confidence and be able to work through disappointing people. Now, are there any strengths on that list that are not used as frequently, but still give you energy and you still perform well, that you might just want to use perhaps in combination with your persuasion and your judgments and your spotlight, among other strengths? Like what looks kind of appealing to you on that list?
I mean, the reason I'm doing this work is equality on some level, right? I think I kind of grew up very lucky in my life, and I look at other people and think, like, can we at least create a good mountain biking experience for them? We can't fix the world, but can we do that? So that word just kind of sticks out to me. I'm not sure exactly how it aligns with the realized strengths column. Along with that, our whole organization, from a financial perspective, everything we do is based on deep relationships, right? Like everything is, do you trust, does a donor trust us to do good work? Does a donor trust us just even have a conversation with us and things like that? So I think that actually is something that I probably do very well just by being out in the community. Like here in Vail, we have a lot of mountain bikers. And because I'm out there on a regular basis, like they're seeing me a lot and they're like, oh yeah, Brett's a pretty good guy and his team's pretty good at what they do. And so I think that, those two and building relationships for me generally is pretty easy. Right. And I can usually find something to talk with people about. So yeah, those two kind of stick out.
So if you think about a scenario where you have in the past or you may in the future, you may anticipate that you're going to need to have some confidence because something maybe is not going to turn out the way you planned, whether it's financial or someone's agreeing to your point of view or what have you. How could you lean more into both of those strengths? It sounds like you're already feeling the positive effects of them, but I wonder how you could lean a little bit more into them in some specific way so that you have confidence and the, ideas of how you can resolve the conflict.
Well, with the equality piece, I think often the lack of confidence can come from just not knowing if you're doing the right thing. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of resources to create equity on a bike and things like that. And so when you lose your confidence, I think sometimes you're just wondering, am I doing the right thing? I guess. And equality for us is basically the whole reason our whole organization exists. So to me, that's kind of like going back to the mission and like, yes, we're trying to make the world a better place. And so to me, if I align myself with the mission before a big donor meeting or something like that, like I can pretty quickly boost my passion to have that conversation with the donor. Right. And then from a relationship deepener, whether it's, asking donors or foundations for maybe added funds or something like that, or having a conversation, let's say it's a staff member that doesn't agree with my decision. And I have found that usually opening myself up to 15 or 20-minute conversation with that person about this specific topic, like really usually gets rid of almost all the angst that goes along with it. Right. And so, yeah, I think I use those already, but it's probably a trigger that I can use more often and be like, oh, wait a minute, these are two things that work for me.
Mm-hmm.
and go to those things quicker.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the goal of this conversation in my mind is just to be sure you are as conscious of the strengths that are in your toolkit as possible so that when you find yourself in these situations where you're feeling a little unsure or stuck, that you are thinking about, all right, well, what's another way that is authentic to me that I've had some
Yeah.
success with in the past that might not be the first thing I would think of, but once I start introducing this into my mindset or my strategy or the way I'm framing it, all of a sudden my self-belief gets boosted even more. And let me comment a little bit more on that, what I just said there about self-belief. So we all have varying levels of self-confidence based on so many things, but one of the most important things it's based on is our self-awareness and our knowledge and use of our strengths. So the data that supports positive psychology and strengths tells us very clearly that the more we use our strengths, the more confident we feel. So that's why I love being a strength coach, because I'm trying to help people not only understand the strengths that are kind of common sense to them, that come so easily, that they use really frequently, like these strengths we started off with, kind of your real life strengths, but also to see, wow, I've got quite a few tools in my toolkit. And so, what's another way, perhaps, that I could approach this through another lens of a different strength that just might give me another alternative to try? And the likelihood of success is greatest when you're choosing other strengths that also give you energy that come really carefully and easily to you, like with the two we just talked about. I want to point out to you, since I've got the privilege of looking at your list of strengths here, that another one of your unrealized strengths is called bounce back. And that's the strength that suggests that you are really good at taking a setback in stride once you take a look at that situation and say, you know what, I'm going to be better actually as a result of this setback because I learned something, I'm doing something differently, I experienced something, I grew in some way. And the way I look at bounce back as a incredible tool that many people have is almost like a safety net. You know, it's like, all right, if this doesn't go well, I've tried this attempt to relationship deepen more with this person or to persuade them, but it's okay because I will get something from this kind of no matter what. And I'm curious to know what your reaction is to be pointing out that bounce back strength for you and kind of wondering, have you noticed other times in your leadership where that particular strength has been useful?
I'm not sure I've ever talked to any leader that doesn't need bounce back on a regular
Mm-hmm.
basis. Maybe not every 10 minutes, but they probably need it every week.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I'm pretty good with that. There's certainly days where I come home and I just kind of feel a little beaten down, but usually like a night's sleep really mindset shifts the next morning. And so, and even, I mean, we had an organization just like everybody else that in February of 2020 was told you can't meet in person anymore and you can't do all these things. And we're like, and one day later we had a plan ready to go, like how we were going to operate, the next day with COVID. Or, we have regular grants that we think we're getting and then we end up not getting. And we're just like, okay, well, we're going to not focus on this one. We're going to focus on the next one. I think I'm pretty good at bouncing back. I just think that I spend a lot of time focusing on what the issues are in our organization. So I do sit in the problem solving a lot, but it's pretty quick to like, okay, here's our answer within 5 minutes. Let's go. Let's try that. And then
Mm-hmm.
that didn't work. Okay, let's try another thing. And so, well, I know people ask me regularly, like, how'd you do what you did? Or, how have you guys grown? Or whatever that question is, like, you try really, really hard. And then when it doesn't work out, you try really, really hard again. And then you try really, really hard again. I mean, it's really a lot of that, I think, comes down to it's that simple. I also think that I spent a lot of time doing trail running races and mountain bike races and things like
Mm-hmm.
that, where like they're really hard. And it's not like I really enjoy these that much, but I sign up for them to build that resilience and kind of that bounce back of like doing what you say you're going to do, getting the start line and stuff. So yeah, I think that's probably pretty prevalent in my life, the bounce
Mm-hmm.
backness.
Let me share another little factoid with you. When we use four or more, we increase the likelihood that we get into that state of psychological flow where we lose track of time, which hopefully makes sense because if you're using one strength, it feels good. If you're using a second strength that you perform well, you get energy from, it feels even better. You would layer on a third strength. It's like the fourth one, like you're in your zone. It's just like the method that you're moving forward with makes a lot of sense. So I give you that number as perhaps a little goal to keep in mind when you're facing something as a leader that feels a little bit daunting, is to think about or even take a look at your strengths profile and say, all right, well, what's one of my strengths that I could use to deal with this situation? And what's the second one? And what's the third one? And what's the fourth one? And whether you are doing this for yourself or whether you are helping someone who works for you step into themselves and be the best version of themselves as a employee of the cycle effect. When you introduce them to the idea, what's the strength you could use to solve this problem? And what's the second one, a third one, a fourth one? Then they become more self-confident because their self-belief grows because they're using quite a few of their strengths. And when we use quite a few of our strengths at one time, it makes it easier for us to accept that we're not good at everything, but these are the things that I really own. And this is what I'm particularly strong in. And this is where my success is most likely going to come. But I also notice when I'm looking at your report that, like everybody, you have a certain set of strengths in the strengths profile that are called learned behaviors that you're good at. But despite the opportunities people may give you to use that strength more, or the compliments, or the promotion, or the pay raise, or whatever, sometimes we all have these strengths that we perform well, but they're kind of draining for us to use. Again, despite whatever feedback we get from people. And on your list, I see here is adaptability, which sounds like it's part of what you were just describing there. It's like, well, these things are going to come along. And if I just go home and get a good night's sleep, I'll be able to adapt the next day. I'll sort of figure out what I have to do. But presumably, with adaptability being something you're good at, but trained by, as soon as you remember to trigger the bounce back, then the adaptability kind of kicks in. Doesn't make adapting, or really for any of our learned behaviors, doesn't instantly make them enjoyable. But when we package them or frame them with any of our realized and unrealized strengths, it ignites us in a different direction. It kind of pulls along the leadership behavior, like adaptability, that we have to have sometimes. Yeah. What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, this column's real draining for me, for sure. Right. I've done
Mm-hmm.
other assessments where it's like, these are the things that will drain you. So, for instance, I'm a very adaptable head of IT for the cycle effect. I know
Mm-hmm.
just enough to be super dangerous with our IT and our networks and stuff because I've had to. I've had to learn that stuff. When you start an organization, you're literally the only person, and there's 50 seats you need to fill, like marketing and IT and all that stuff. And you kind of adapt. And so I'm fortunate enough to now be getting out of the space where I have to adapt as much, where we actually have a full-time fundraising team and a full-time programming team. So the places where I'm not as strong, luckily I'm getting to the point where I can give some of that work away. I'm still the end all decision maker at the end of the day. But I've learned to be adaptable. I don't think anybody like wakes up every morning like, man, I hope I can be really adaptable today. Like they want to be right, or they want to be like, this is the way we're going, or like, let's do it. So yeah, it's something that I've learned, but it's draining to me. And even with the feedback piece, like I don't want this to come across as arrogant, but like as an organization, like we generally make pretty good decisions. We're pretty on
Mm-hmm.
top of it. We pretty much do our
Mm-hmm.
research. Now we've made a lot of mistakes, but no like major mistakes where we're like, oh man, what are we doing way over here? What I've found as a leader is I've got 15 steps in my head planned out ahead of time, kind of knowing where we're going. And then I often have to come back to like step two and really explain the process and slow down and really kind of be adaptable in a way of like, okay, we're going to tell this whole thing because everybody wants to know what's happening and things like that. So yeah, and I'm only going here because it is draining, right? When you know like your next 10 steps and you're ready to go and you have to keep coming back and explaining like step one, two, or three, like that can be energy draining to me for sure. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
you have to do it as a leader, and you have to slow
Mm-hmm.
yourself down, and you have to make sure that everybody has that clear vision. But we went through probably 6 or 7 years where I didn't do that, and we weren't very successful because people didn't know what was going on because I didn't do a good job of explaining things. And then we really redefined our vision, redefined how we talk about our vision, our values, and stuff like that. And now it's very clear what the organization is. So I don't have to slow down to explain it. It's very clear in documentation and meetings and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's been a huge thing for us where I've had to slow down a lot to create it. But then after that, it's given me a lot of freedom of not
Mm-hmm.
having to feel like I'm second guessed all the time when really they just want to know what's happening. It's not like they're
Mm-hmm.
second guessing me as a person. They just want to know where they're
Mm-hmm.
going.
Yes, giving people context really helps them feel safer. When we have learned behaviors, these sort of draining strengths that we have to use, whether it's adapting or giving feedback or taking action, whatever it might be, and we each all have our own strengths that we're good at that drain us. There are really two strategies for us to use. Number one really is to ask yourself, is there somebody else on my team that is genuinely energized in this area where I'm not energized and don't feel sometimes that I'm not capable, like adapting, because there probably is somebody that loves, just as you love, being in the spotlight. There's somebody else who doesn't like being spotlight at all, but there's someone who like kind of gets a thrill out of, believe it or not, thinking about, well, how am I going to have to shift to make this happen or make that happen? Like they like the challenge of thinking that through. So anyway, the first question is always
Sure.
ask yourself: is there somebody else that can do this with me or kind of take it for me in an area of my leadership where I'm capable, but it's makes my day long? Or secondly, if that's not an option for you, then the next question is to ask yourself, all right, well, which of my energizing strengths where I am feel more fulfilled when I use them, can I use alongside this draining strength? So I reframe, like you did with mission. I sort of reframe the way that I'm thinking about this or how I'm going to go about it so that it becomes more energizing. It's not going to take the drain of adaptability completely away, but it's going to kind of take the edge of it off. And as I look at your list of strengths, there's a couple here that we haven't talked about that I just want to bring to your attention to be sure that you are honoring the value of these. And the two that catch my eye are esteem building and enabling. Esteem builder is one of your strengths, and that definition suggests that you're really good at helping other people feel confident in themselves in ways that they may not otherwise see in themselves, and that therefore helps them achieve things they're capable of achieving by you bringing that to their attention. And then the enabler strength, which is also on your list, suggests that you're really good at helping people do things for themselves. You're going to give them tasks and challenges that are going to stretch them, maybe a bit out of their comfort zone, but that's really going to help them grow and develop. So as I think about feedback, one of the draining strengths that you mentioned, I'm wondering how you currently use or could use even more the esteem building leadership quality that you have and the enabling leadership quality you have as a way to kind of package the feedback that you have to give, whether it's you don't disagree with somebody, whether you disagree with somebody on something, or you have to tell them something that's going to be hard for them to hear. But how can you or do you enable them and esteem build them to take a little bit of the sting or the drain away from the feedback that is the content of what you're providing?
Good question. I think that every leader I talk to, like feedback, not every, most leaders I talk to, giving feedback and sometimes receiving feedback can be pretty tough, right? And so one thing that I would just recommend to anybody is like find a system for feedback that's consistent and the same all the time. So like your people are just used to it and they're just like, yeah, this is how we give feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really helped us so that it didn't become this personal thing with the employees or them giving me feedback. It was just simply, this is how we give feedback. We created it within our culture and we just said, this is how we do it. So it's not like this surprise, right? And then while we're in there, we are as an organization, like we're always, we try to give feedback right away, just as a general rule. And
Mm-hmm.
then with that, it's like, hey, this didn't go as planned. Tell me how we're going to make it different next time, or tell me what we learned. I mean, it's really basic stuff. But if we start looking at I think that when people get feedback that they would consider negative or constructive criticism, whatever, whatever terms people want to use, I think they're pretty eager to like make it right. I think they're pretty easy to fix things. And so if it's like, hey, X happened, let's talk about how we can get Y to happen instead, to kind of to the enabling and to the, building the esteem. It's like, yeah, great. You've got this. Go do it again. Now, if the person
Mm-hmm.
tries 30 things in a row and every single thing gets screwed up, you're probably having a different conversation. But if they had kind of one thing that didn't go correctly or the way you expected, and then they go out and do three things and they nail it, like then they're just learning. They're just figuring out
Mm-hmm.
how to do their job better and making the organization better. So yeah, I mean, I think the whole organization was literally built on what was the second one you said, esteem builder and the yeah,
Enabling.
I mean, the whole organization was built on enabling our girls and building esteem in them to realize that their life isn't predetermined and they can do whatever they want with it. So I think that we've done that kind of permeates throughout the organization in a
Mm-hmm.
way. Yeah, our future is not defined for us just because somebody told us something when we were 8 years old and we like took it on as a true belief. Like, no, we can change our life and our impact and stuff like that. So I think that's just a natural thing for our organization.
All right. And on the topic of your organization, let's shift this conversation as we kind of bring it to a close. I'd love to know,
Sure.
outside of enabling, what are some of the other strengths of the cycle effect that set you apart and help the organization to be under your leadership as successful as it has been?
I think we've been successful and will continue to be successful because we're innovative. And we
Yeah.
often, every 3 to 6 months, just say, like, what are we doing that we should stop doing to make room for the things we need to start doing to grow up to be who we want to be, right? Whether
Mm,
it's our 3 year, 5 year, 10 year goals and vision, it's like we cannot be who we are now in order to do that. So, on one of my strengths, I think it's growth. And like it's not like I want to try to self grow all the time, and like it's exhausting sometimes, but it's like I personally can't be Brett now in 2 years from now and have the organization be where it wants to be. I need to be a completely different leader, right? And I had better
hmm
learn from those people on how to do that, or I'm either out of a job because they need somebody better or something like that. So I think we have this growth mindset. We have a book club every 2 weeks talking about how we can be better either as the individual teammate, as a part of the team, or as the whole team together as an organization. Innovation, like we just really hate being stagnant. We really
hmm
like trying new things and getting out there to a fault sometimes because we chase shiny objects for sure. Or like, oh,
hmm
maybe we shouldn't have chased that one. That wasn't totally in line with our mission and stuff. But yeah, I guess the thing that sets us apart is like every single person in our organization really wants to grow on an individual standpoint and then in their job and in their career. So one of our biggest goals around growth is like we get to keep amazing people if we keep growing. We also get to
Yeah.
change lives. We get to change like
Uh-huh.
thousands of lives every year if we do it. But we also get to keep amazing people, and we won't keep these people if they aren't challenged and want to grow. And it's uncomfortable, right? Like there's times where people
hmm
come to me like, well, I don't want to grow anymore, but we're going to keep growing. We just may slow it down a little bit for the next month or two till we get our hands on the reins a little better. So yeah, I think those are two things that we've done, pretty well.
All right. Well, thank you so much
You're welcome.
for giving me your time today and for all the listeners, the benefit that they have, not only learning about the value of using your strengths strategically, but also learning more about the cycle effect. Good luck with everything that you are doing for all these girls. They're so blessed to have you as a leader of this organization because I can see how much you care and the depth of your knowledge that you have brought forth over all these years to really make a difference in their lives. So, from all of them
Well,
and from me, thank you. Go ahead.
it's been an honor. It's really fun to see you again. But I really appreciate you walking me through this and letting me understand it better because there's definitely a couple action items here that I can take back right away and start implementing. So thank you.
You're welcome. You know where to find me. If you
Of
want to talk
course.
about it again, just give me a hoot. This is my favorite thing to do is really help people understand their strengths. So with that, take good care. And listeners, if you can hang on for in a couple of minutes, I'll share a little bit more about how you can take the strengths profile. That was such an honest and thoughtful conversation with Brett Donelson. I appreciated how openly he talked about what it really takes to lead when you're building something new, staying grounded, learning from setbacks, and continuing to grow right alongside the mission. If you'd like to learn more about the cycle effect, you'll find a link in the show notes, along with information about our introspective strength cards, which are a simple and creative way to build self-confidence and energy in your day. And in the show notes, you'll find a link to take your own strengths profile assessment, including a free summary of your top strengths. So thanks for listening to the Strength Catalyst. And until next time, keep leaning into your strengths and using them wisely.